You know, I gotta tell you, if you look like this, you've seen some stuff in your life. But, yeah, special forces aside, this doesn't look too realistic, does it? Not really. It doesn't look that realistic to me, and, man, I can't believe I paid $6 for this. Nevertheless, I think you look at this, and you understand that this is a soldier, and it's supposed to be a portrayal of, maybe an army soldier, because he's got a gun, he's got a pistol, canteen, some binoculars, and he's dressed up like a soldier. Makes pretty good sense. It doesn't necessarily say that he's a soldier, nowhere on this box, but you kind of understand and assume that. Even on the back it doesn't say he's a soldier. It doesn't say he belongs to the army, but you probably assume that because of the camouflage. So sweet. Where am I going with this? Other than the fact that I paid way too much for a really crappy action figure. Well, viewer, I'm glad you asked. War. War never changes. And neither does Call of Duty. $60 later, and you will feel bad for buying the same exact game again every single year. Besides setting, this bad boy is pretty much identical to that. It's like the holidays. But unlike Veterans Day, where we celebrate our war heroes, Call of Duty is like serving in the military only to find out that kids think military life is just like, well, Call of Duty. You know, $60 for this game, and I could have bought 10 of these bad boys. I did not pay $60 for this. I actually got it for $20, believe it or not. You could kind of refer to this as a kind of theory review mishmash hybrid. We will be talking about how realistic Call of Duty is. We'll be talking about how realistic these games are. Specifically this one, but I mean, I guess you could throw in pretty much any Call of Duty. Oh, but Proto, I hear you saying, didn't game theory do something like this involving war crimes? And I would reply, how astute of you, viewer, but war crimes is just a small portion of realism. This video could even apply to Battlefield 1 because it too is a war-based game, though significantly different from Call of Duty. So sign in and get yourself something to drink because the orders are coming down from top brass, soldier, and it's your job to determine if this video's worth liking and sharing or not. Cue the intro. It's fair to say I often speak about my military service, so much so that people dislike this. But I served 5 years active duty, not weekend warrior, every single day, and a year deployed as well. I understand some viewers' frustration with this, and I will try to mention it less, but this video needs prefaced with the knowledge that I, a veteran, have gone through some military experience and compare first-hand experience with video games like good old Call of Duty. Elephant in the room here. A few things are drastically unrealistic about Call of Duty that I would like to address first. Specifically, the World War II one. Okay, rest and relaxation video games being one, because those Atari games did not exist during the time. Random supply drops within seconds, dropping out of the sky magically, and how fast soldiers rank up. Definitely not realistic portrayal of how soldiers really do rank up. Yeah, there are plenty of things as well, but for now, just understand that there are some glaring, obvious, unrealistic things to Call of Duty World War II. But is the bulk of the game realistic to the extent of campaign and multiplayer? Well, no, not really. I mean, come on, man, did you realistically think that this game was even remotely realistic with a mode called Zombies? Pshaw! This would bring up the argument of how much realism is really needed as opposed to a game like, well, Infinite Warfare. Even in a game like that, though, you know, you do need a degree of realism to maintain what is happening in that world that might be possibly applicable to reality. All that translates to basic things happening in the game that would happen in hours. So a shotgun would kill in one shot. Gravity prevents moon jumps on Earth, etc. So the next best question asked is, how realistic comparably to real-life Army experience is Call of Duty World War II specifically, as we have real experience to compare it to these days, history books to compare it to, and I am a veteran, as aforementioned. Let me begin by saying that the campaign is a bit rough. There is no regenerating life in the campaign. However, let me explain that if you are shot, there's a big chance that you might not recover in real life, just like in Call of Duty. You don't get a med pack to slap on it and fix it magically. Let's say, for example, you are shot in Call of Duty, and it's not a deadly shot, more just like a leg wound. You could still walk around, run around, be just fine. Get a med pack from your friend, hey, patched up, I'm all good, happy-go-lucky, yay. There's no way you, as a soldier, would be able to continue walking on that leg for long in real life at all. So, if you were shot by a caliber any higher than 9mm, the odds are you would be able to not continue on. There would be slim to no chance that you would be able to even walk on that leg. You might bleed out, go into shock, but you would likely exit the war immediately after first aid and spend the rest of your time in a hospital if you're lucky. Not very exciting, but the truth. Within the game's campaign and multiplayer, players are very gung-ho about this, often running into the fray. This is only because those individuals cannot die forever, as in, this is not your life. Fairly obvious, if you can't die and you don't feel fear or pain, you're going to treat your life as not that important. Within the military, I was trained to see the enemy as a target, to not second-guess any situation, to not fear, and that in the heat of the battle would cause me to not lock up. So it was pretty solid training, because you don't want to lock up in the heat of the battle and freak out and panic when you're getting fired at. Combined with adrenaline, this is somewhat accurate, as when I was at war, we all knew that we were going to die at any time. A mortar could fall on our head, bomb could go off, you never know. That said, death did not bother us soldiers anymore. Most of us did not have serious families, though. So when we died, we would just leave behind our extended families, which means if you, as a soldier, no longer fear death, then you also would be very gung-ho about it and not really care. I was not infantry. I worked with 5th Group Special Forces, 160th SOAR, and 101st Airborne Divisions, but I was not infantry. Think about this. If my unit, which was primarily supply and aviation cavalry, if we felt like that, we didn't really care that we were going to die, maybe possibly with our training, how do you think the infantry feels when they are trained specifically for those situations? So while it seems very unrealistic to be very gung-ho in Call of Duty World War II, it's not necessarily wrong. But jumping off buildings and shooting people while doing that jump, running through non-cleared buildings and quick-scoping and no-scoping, these are things that might have happened somehow, I don't know how, but as frequently as they do happen in multiplayer matches on Call of Duty, no, not at all. This is very unrealistic. Soldiers do not run headlong into bullets. There are methods like 3 to 5 second rushes where soldiers sprint and drop onto the ground, crawl, then sprint again. And soldiers do not run through non-cleared buildings either, due to the possibility of ambushes, which is why we clear them all first. Let's talk about bayonets and shovels. World War II, no doubt, was a terrible war, and when ammo was low, soldiers would often use any weapons they could find. Rocks, shovels, whatever they could get their hands on. That said, most weapons for infantry contained the legendary bayonet, a knife mounted on the end of a rifle to be used for close combat. The odds a soldier would be using a shovel opposed to one of these bayonets fairly low. Again, if you have a knife, you would use a knife and not a shovel. Again, not saying it would be impossible, but highly unlikely, and again, very unrealistic. On a side note, With how very well known Battlefield 1's marketing was, containing the famed shovel scene and the trailers, this really isn't surprising to see thrown into Call of Duty. I mean, it feels like they just took it from that game and put it in theirs because it's kind of the same war. Not really. Two. There's a 2 on the end, but whatever. The shovel is currently known as something called an E-tool. If you were to kill an enemy with an E-tool currently, you would probably end up in court explaining why you didn't use a rifle, pistol, or knife instead, or other approved weapons. Why did you kill someone with a shovel when you had all of these at your disposal? Let's talk about war crimes. Applying World War II logic to current war operations is impossible. But that said, again, killing someone with excessive force was still frowned upon during World War II. This would include excessive fire, bullets, explosives, or gas. During World War II, there was little enforcement of these rules because the United Nations had yet to create a more recent war rules that most nations would currently abide by. This was many years ago. Is it realistic to see soldiers throwing away bullets like candy? No, not really. Bullets were a commodity, and guns often jammed up. The less firing, the greater chance you had of your rifle being able to work when you needed it to, so you wouldn't fire your rifle unless you needed to. Even novice soldiers were taught not to fire recklessly and to conserve ammunition. So again, kids playing online, running around, emptying clips onto one enemy, not exactly realistic. Let's see here. We covered some war crimes, no scopers, quick scopers, supply drops. Oh yeah, let's not forget drop shotting. Yeah, so if you were to encounter an enemy head on, are you going to fall to the ground, risk missing your shot, or dropping your weapon, or having it jam up, or your clip falling out of your weapon, your magazine falling out of your weapon, and then dying? Yeah, that's really stupid. And again, unrealistic. In my time, with all of my training, I have never once been told head on to drop to the ground when facing enemies head on. I could keep going on about all of this, but I think we've reached a verdict that, shocker, Call of Duty World War II is not very realistic and not true to how war was during that period of time. But if it were, then it would be a much slower paced game and possibly not as fun and not appealing to the masses as much as it does now. Who knows, it might have turned out like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. That actually probably would have applied more logically to Call of Duty World War II, but hey, personally, if you ask me, I think it should have been like Destiny 2 with an open world emphasis on submissions, hubs, and a soldier that would advance in rank with multiplayer and campaign emphasized and the zombies mode available as well. All stemming across one soldier, but you know, one massive RPG with a greater emphasis on co-op and multiplayer. That's just me though. Take Destiny, put a Call of Duty skin on it, and you got yourself a winner. But that's just how I feel. Ladies and gentlemen, Call of Duty World War II is a solid game. It's not completely broken. It's similar to other Call of Duties, and if you like the series, you will probably like this game. But give it to your war veteran grandfather from World War II, and his response might be something like, "What is this crap?" So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a big thumbs up and share it with other soldiers and get some different opinions about this subject. Leave me a comment down below if you think this game is more realistic than what I explained. And that I've been your host, Protomario, and I'm signing out. As always, good gaming, God bless, and thanks for watching.